the decline of GameStop. What happened? I know you guys went to GameStop a lot when y'all was younger as well, like I have. When I was growing up, I was a Lego freak, so I played hella Lego games. Just let me know in the comments what type of games you guys buy.
I have this cool new website where you can submit potential video ideas and vote. Everyone wants me to talk about GameStop more than anything else, and I can see why. There's a good chance that they are, or once were, a big part of your life, and they're not doing well. I don't want to mislead you. I've covered companies on this channel that have fallen much further than this. To me anyway, their current...
I completely forgot JCPenney existed. Didn't they shut down every location?
...isn't as bad as some people are making it out to be. I think GameStop is one of those places that everyone likes to make fun of, right? You love to hate them, or maybe you just straight up hate them. So maybe when they fall on tough times like this, people like to exaggerate the issue. Or maybe it's because this is a decline that's easy to understand. I'll go more into it later, but more and more people are buying their games digitally, and that's not good for a store that relies on the sale of physical copies.
Yeah, I still see a lot of GameStops open. I don't know how they're still open. Like, everybody buys their consoles online, all their games online. How is GameStop still in business?
Their sales over the last 10 years, they actually haven't gone down in the way that we might expect. Some of the biggest evidence of their decline is a $673 million loss in 2018, which is actually the result of a near $1 billion goodwill impairment charge that they say is a result of a sustained decline in our market capitalization and lower forecasted cash flows. So that brings us to their stock price, which is horrible. What can I say about it? $40 range in 2015 to single digits in 2019. And it's not that they're doing...
Bro, like I said, how are they still in business? There's no way. I still see me seeing a lot of GameStops all over the place.
It's more that the market has no confidence in the future of the company. It feels like they've been diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. The symptoms are starting to show now, but if untreated, this thing can go bad fast. And there's no easy treatment. They've been going through CEOs like crazy, and none of them have put together a clear plan. Let me go back to the...
Because there's really nothing you could do to like bring that back. Like, everybody buys the games online, consoles. Like I already said it, all you can really do at GameStop is buy shit outside of games, like accessories or something, or like a new controller.
The beginning. James McCurry and Gary Cousin were two friends attending Harvard Business School with aspirations of starting a business together. A few years after graduation, they came up with an idea for a potential new business that would specialize in selling computer software and video games. Here's why they thought that would be a good idea. For one, home computers were becoming popular. The manufacturers had price wars going on, they were becoming cheaper and better, and everyone was buying them. The other reason was the popularity of home video game consoles. The video game market was going crazy in the early 80s. You had the Atari 2600, of course, selling 30 million units, but then you also had Intellivision and ColecoVision pushing their way.
What the fuck is that? I've never seen... What is that? What am I looking... I've never seen this in my life. I've seen the other system, but not this.
Along with countless others. In fact, a small tangent, but do you know about the great video game crash of 1983? In that year, the entire North American video game market came crashing down, and a big reason behind it was oversaturation. Just imagine that. So many companies saw such great potential in the market. We're talking about dozens of them, all coming out with their consoles and the games to go with them, along with third parties producing their...
Like, what is... Like, I really thought it's a telephone thing or something.
On these consoles, it was all too much. There was no uniformity. They were all being rushed out. In many cases, the quality became questionable, which steered people away. All of this combined with the rising popularity of home computers on which you could play video games meant that these consoles... I only mention the crash because it helps express how booming the market was just before it. Back to these two. It took them a little time to get the funding for their store. It ultimately came about a year later by Ross Perot, if you know that guy, who ultimately bought in and received 1/3 ownership. In late 1983, they opened their first store in Dallas and called it Babbage's, named after a mathematician from the 1800s that appears to have done a lot of original early work in inventing the computer. They did open their first store right in the middle of the big video game crash, so that wasn't good. They posted some pretty major losses in the first few years, but they made it through it. They were sure to sell mostly games from the most popular consoles, like the Atari 2600, plus computer software was a big part of their business, plus they opened it in the middle of the crash, crash. And
What was the first good computer game that's like kind of modern day to this day? Like,
so I theorize
I
that
would look it up,
motivated
but I
them to
don't
put a
feel
larger
like
emphasis
doing it
on the
now.
home computer side of things since they already saw where the consoles were headed. In 1985, and maybe you've heard of this, the Nintendo Entertainment System was released in North America, and it's generally credited with saving the industry. 60 million units sold, which was good news for a store that sold video games for it. These games became an ever-increasing portion of their business, and in the following years, Babbage's finally started turning profits. In 1988, they became a public company when they sold 30% of it for $20 million, and that $20 million was put right back into the store and used to open new locations. New systems kept coming out, video games continued growing in popularity.
I've seen that, but not the other fucking weird ass phone console,
And it was
bruh.
all good for Babbage's. Things get a little messy from here, and it's easy to get lost in the details, so let me just go over some of the highlights. In 1994, they doubled in size when they merged with another similar software store called Software Etc. It was a 380 store chain merging with a 335 store chain. By 1996, there were all these new systems on the market, and it motivated Toys R Us and Best Buy and everyone else to get involved. All the new competition caused sales to drop and brought them into bankruptcy. The next month, it was bought by Leonard Riggio, who was the founder and primary owner of
They went through hell the first few years.
Barnes &
trying to
Noble,
get this
and he was
company
already
going.
involved in this business too, since he helped start Software Etc. From there, he closed a couple hundred stores, restructured a few things, and in 1999 started opening stores under the name GameStop. They would focus
There
more
you
on
go.
used video games. A few months later, the entire company was sold again, this time to Barnes & Noble. They saw this as a good opportunity to enter the video game market and thought that the $215 million they paid for it was a good deal. It included 495 stores, only 20 of which were branded as GameStop, and the rest were either Babbage's or Software Etc. About a year later, Barnes & Noble made another deal when they bought 400 Funko.
Wait, Barnes & Noble?
$62 million. Soon after, Funko's name was changed to GameStop. In 2002, Barnes & Noble decided to make GameStop a public company, but still maintain majority ownership. 2 years later, through a combination of a $100 million stock repurchase and an additional dividend distribution, Barnes & Noble ended their involvement and GameStop was now on their own. Holy cow, that was a lot. But by 2004, they were incredibly successful. They proudly called themselves America's largest video game retailer, and it was hard for anyone to dispute that. They were adding hundreds of new locations every year while rebranding those other stores as GameStops. Their revenues were increasing accordingly, mostly due to the release and growing popularity of the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and handheld systems over this time. They
those are the days where the GameStop was just at its prime. That's where they made. Oh my God.
Which at that time was the largest growing magazine in the country with over 2 million paid subscribers. They had an online presence with GameStop.com and an arrangement with Amazon that made GameStop the
Was that NBA Live? Fucking ass. I hate it. I hate NBA Live.
With GameStop.com and an arrangement with Amazon that made GameStop the exclusive specialty video game retailer listed on their site. However you want to define success, I think they were meeting the criteria. And it just gets better from there. The next year, they took out almost $1 billion in debt to buy what many would consider their biggest competitor, Electronics Boutique, who you may know better as EB Games. Now, that was quite a year, and they added hundreds of new locations throughout Canada, Australia, and Europe. They had a slight fall in comparable store sales that year, but as you can see, it just took off in the years following. Alright, that's how they got so big. So let's extend everything to today. By most key measures, including revenue, you can call 2010, 2011 their best years. But as I said, they haven't fallen too much from there. Here's a breakdown of all their revenue sources going back to their public offering in 2002. The blue line is game systems, and they're really not too important for GameStop. The orange line is the new games that they're
Actually, I mean, a lot of people still buy the systems from GameStop. GameStop do still sell like systems and all that. Mostly people get it from Best Buy.
Shows their percentage of revenue, but obviously their total revenue is going down, so this is as well. And it's because they're getting hit from all angles. The shift toward digital downloads, I would say, is most responsible. Buying games straight from your PlayStation or whatever system, plenty of advantages to it that I'm sure I don't have to tell you about. And add to that game streaming from multiple platforms. You can also see how that would be negative for GameStop. Then, even when someone is looking for that physical copy, it's a competitive market. market. Obviously, Amazon, Best Buy had their Gamers Club.
see?
It's no surprise that this orange line has been
like you
going
get it
down,
from
and
anywhere,
I think
bruh.
most of us would predict that decline to continue. Their biggest issue is the gray line, used game sales, because it's been dropping even faster over the past 3 years. And you can see how that's tied to their decline in new game sales. Fewer new games sold means fewer used games out there, which is bad because their largest profit margin, essentially the most
Who would buy a used game unless it's like you have a exactly? I'm about to say like a Wii or like an old system. Many people have old systems like that. They want to buy new games. They just have all the games that they already previously owned. Just play those games. So I don't see the point of selling pre-owned games.
I'm sure you've experienced it. You go to trade in your copy of NBA 2K18 and they give you less than $1 for it. Then
Shitty ass game. Oh my god, I regret buying this.
they take it and sell it to someone
This game
else
is
for
so
$6.99.
bad.
That's a pretty good profit
So
margin.
bad.
So they want that to be their main source of revenue. But as you can see, it's quickly becoming their smallest source. The yellow line, which represents everything else, has been rising. This segment mainly consists of video game accessories and collectibles, but the margins aren't quite as high, and the sustainability of those numbers has come into question. A good part of it is from those Funko Pop figures, which many have labeled as a fad, don't create loyal customers in the same way that video games do. The bottom line is, overall, their profit margins have been sinking for the past 3 years because they're having trouble selling the stuff that makes them money, which also happens to be the stuff that we most associate with them. The core of their business is becoming outdated, and everyone knows it. So the idea is GameStop needs to make some changes. They can hang on to this current model for a little longer, but we all see where it's headed, and many would argue they've already hung on for far too long. For a public company, it's hard to make those changes. You have millions of shareholders expecting quick results. Most of them aren't willing to stick around through a few bad years as they figure it out. It's like they need to call a timeout, get a little rest, huddle together, drop a few good plays, and get back in the game. Sort of what they were trying to do in the beginning.
I hope that that's what they're doing now, because like that. This video was made like 5 years ago, so and they still haven't made that change. They still doing the same thing that they're doing now.
Beginning of
Wonder how
2019,
the
when they
stocks
were
is.
looking for a buyer. That way, they can be taken off the market and given a chance to try out some of these changes. Well, that never happened. They gave up on their search for a buyer
make
and
it
they
to a
remain on their
GameStop.
own.
Wow,
Their
is it?
stock price had a huge drop when they announced that and continued dropping ever since. Investors simply have no confidence in GameStop's business model, and they've yet to outline something better. Let me know in the comments. What should they do? They need to give customers a reason to go there as opposed to downloading their games at home or stopping at Best Buy or wherever. And I think I've got it. Maybe they should start pushing the rewards program onto the customers. They hardly ever mention that. Okay, but really, I don't know. It sure sounds like they need to transition into
It depends on what GameStop you go to, because most of the GameStops I went to, they was like, hey, sign up, bro. You basically get free games off your points.
There's been talk about them getting involved in esports, but no clear plan in place. They've tried other seemingly random things. They had a mobile business that
good
they
start
recently
to it.
sold. ThinkGeek, Simply Mac, they're all over the place. But it just all feels like side efforts rather than something that can actually save them. And of course, I could talk about some more specific issues with employees and customer experience, but again, I don't know how significant that is. There's a bigger issue here. Plus, I'll leave that to you to discuss in the comments.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think the CEO cares enough, or he probably just cooking something up, because nothing changed. Yeah, this video is like 5 years ago. Jeez. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this educational video.